everybody, and welcome back to Anis Vitre. My name is Niwa, and I make videos about the Witcher books by Andrzej Sapkowski. Today we have a very special video because I have received some very special gifts from The Witcher's US imprint, Orbit Books. Because Crossroads of Ravens, or Rozroże Kruków in Polish, releases in English on September 30th. You can see the difference in the sizes of the books, but from what they tell me, size doesn't matter. That was a stupid joke, I'm sorry. In the short form video I did, we already unboxed the book, but I have no idea what's inside this. But first, a bit of backstory for those who aren't in the know. Crossroads of Ravens was released last year in December, but it is only now getting global translations in several different languages, English being one of them. The book has not yet been translated into all languages, however. Particularly, there has been a large delay with the Spanish translation of the book because of some finagling with the publishers. So I am one to say that I am super happy that we are getting the English translation of the book now. It's been nearly a year, and I bet David French has just been cooking. I did read Crossroads of Ravens when it came out, but I can't read Polish. So what I did was I bought the ebook and I crammed the entire thing through Google Translate, which is not how I recommend that you read a book. However, I am very active on Witcher social media and I have a lot of Polish mutuals, so I knew that they would be posting about the book and I didn't want to just be left out and getting spoiled for the entire thing, because if I block Witcher tags on my social media, I'm not going to have any social media to just roll through. It's just going to be like politics and nothing else. I knew that if I didn't read it then and there, it would probably just be spoiled for me, which I didn't want to happen, and thankfully it didn't happen. The ending of the Hussite trilogy actually got spoiled for me when I was like midway through Warriors of God, so I knew that I didn't want a repeat of that. By the way, that was entirely my fault because I didn't block tags. I was actually following the Hussite trilogy tags. I don't know why. I'm not smart sometimes. So technically I have read the book. However, I read the Google Translate version, which had its benefits and its downsides. I wrote a much longer write-up of this on Reddit, which I'll link in the description, but basically, there was some mild confusion around terms like Zatrawcie and Szraty, which are the creatures that Geralt encounters in this book. Google Translate translated Zatrawcie as grasshoppers when I read it, and the line went like, "Oh, grasshoppers are very dangerous. Yes, they eat people." And I was just like, wait, what? But of course, like, I obviously understood that was an error, so I clocked it right away and I was like, okay, what was the actual word? What was messed up here? However, actually, there's a quote in this book that is very relevant. Hold up, I have the ARC. I can find it. "You study bestiaries in order to acquire knowledge about what you will have to fight against. But no bestiary and no book will prepare you for the unknown that we know not, for monsters about which we have no knowledge, nor any comprehension of their existence." When I'm reading a book or, reading anything through online translation, there's always stuff that I immediately recognize as like, okay, that was an error, what was the original? And then I can go into the original text, copy paste, Google search, use your own brain, Wiktionary, Reverso Context, and all of these like various sites. When I recognize that the online translator has messed up, easy peasy, I can usually just figure it out myself. However, there are things that are translated and I don't know that there was even an error, which is why I'm glad that we're getting an official translation, because actually, you don't have to read The Witcher like this, you don't have to read any translated text like this. I just think it adds another layer of dimension and like fun learning to it. But if you get a fan translation, or in some cases an auto translation, and you read it side by side with the official translation, then you can kind of like see between the lines sometimes and see what words were missed or what different takes that the different translators had. So I find that really interesting. And okay, I know that David French's translation is like a big hot topic in the Witcher books fandom, and I do want to make a video on it. The thing is that as someone who doesn't know Polish, I feel like critiquing David French for his translation is just like, okay, well, let's you take a crack at it, wise guy. Like, I'm not going to be one to criticize too harshly of this or that. Translation is not an exact science, it's more of an art form. And also, I know from that one interview that David French did, he's not just translating for himself and for his friends like, fan translators do. This is going through multiple editors and rounds of revision. Through that process, things get cut, things get added, things get changed. It's always just more complicated than it seems on the surface. That being said, there are decisions in the translation that I wouldn't make. Take my opinion with a grain of salt because I'm a Witcher fan and I've read the text a bunch, but I can't actually read Polish, so I don't know anything about translation, but they are decisions that I would not make myself. These are things like using an anglicized version of a term or a more generic version of the term rather than just using the direct translation because it's not a very common word used in English. I kind of like the cultural context that it keeps. I'm usually against the diminishing of cultural context in The Witcher because I feel like that's one of the reasons why English readers, a lot of English readers, including myself, started to get into the books. I think that David French's translation is not a bad translation. It's just a translation with a different set of priorities. I feel like the official translations of the Witcher books are trying to emulate the sense of a fantasy novel in English, which leads to using non-direct translations of words or using more flavorful versions. Sapkowski can be very direct with his words, and sometimes he'll only use one word, 2 words, but then of course that 2 words becomes 3 words, or even 4 words, or even 5 words in English, and suddenly the whole rhythm of the passage is thrown off. That's one criticism I have. The thing is that Sapkowski is trying to emulate, or well, I think that he's trying to emulate the hard-boiled sort of style that came out of crime fiction from the 1930s. This was like a very big thing in the first Witcher short story, and okay, I'm already getting off topic, but I feel like David French is instead trying to emulate a fantasy novel, what a fantasy series prose should be like. And Sapkowski, that's not his priority. It is in some regards, for example, his use of archaic terms, of neologisms, like creating his own fantasy terms in Polish. But in terms of like wordiness and purple prose, Sapkowski does not do purple prose, he does beige prose, okay? It is very direct. So I think that sometimes David French sees that and is like, but it's a fantasy series, right? So this is how fantasy should sound in English. It should be very wordy and have a lot of ands and thes. So that's my thoughts on translation, but I've already wasted so much time talking about all that. We haven't even opened the box. I actually have no idea how to open this. All right, you get to see it first. You get to see it first before I do. All right, you ready? Ready? Okay. You're gonna have to tell me what's in there because I cannot see it. Holy shit. Okay. Hold up. Is this, what is this? Is this a tote bag? Okay. Serve, work. Okay, hold up. Okay, hold up. Me showing up to the function with my double Hansa bag and my Crossroads of Ravens bag. I'm flaunting it. I'm flaunting it. I'm sorry. Little Raven bookmark. Custom die cut. Oh my god, we got stickers. Dandelion sticker. Put that on your poetry. Okay, hold up. Postcard, a little illustration. Oh my god, and then there's the hardcover. I can compare the hardcover translation and the advanced reader copy translation, so I can compare like the first draft and then the final. Oh my god, that's so cool. Okay. Hold up. We got a map of Caven. Wait, is it? It's the whole, no, it's the whole continent, it's the whole continent. I actually do not own any of the hardcovers that came out in, what was it, like, was it 2022, 2023? I'm sorry, my timing is really bad, but I don't actually have any of the hardcovers. This is the first Witcher hardcover edition that I have, as you can see. As you can see, I'm not gonna change my camera, but as you see my bookshelf, they're all paperbacks. So that is very gorgeous. Thank you, Orbit Books. I'm swagged out now, I'm so ready. Oh my god, look at these like chapter markers. Whoa. God, it is like so satisfying to see The Witcher finally being taken seriously. I mean, as books, like look at this. No Netflix. I mean, created before Netflix, so no Netflix, but you know, there is salvation out there. Okay, now we get to say what Novesh was. It's give over. Nice. And then they keep Per Pecora. All right. I totally forgot what this video was supposed to be about. Okay, it was going to be me reviewing Crossroads of Ravens. Duh. You could make a little like dandelion cap and put this feather in the hat instead. I'm full of whimsy. I don't know if I'm gonna like, this is how the shelf is looking. I am going to give a brief read of this book. After that, I'm going to compile my thoughts and put them in my review. I do kind of want to just go over Crossroads of Ravens again. I will have a beautiful copy to read now. So in the video that I've already made about Crossroads of Ravens in February, wasn't in December because I was super late to the party, but, well, actually, I started recording that video in December, and it actually had a Christmas theme to it, but I was too late. I read the book like as soon as it came out on ebook, and then I made that video, and I had this whole idea. Oh God, it's all coming back to me. The secret behind this channel is that there's a lot of cut footage that I end up not using because it's either out of date, or the joke wasn't as funny as I thought, or the footage turned out ugly. So in that video that I made, that was a video essay, and I already have spoken way too long about random, but very briefly, I see the video essays as more like almost like an academic opinion, less of a personal opinion. Maybe that will change in the future depending on how I develop as a video essayist. That's all very analytical stuff that I'm talking about in that video, and I feel like it is more about the book text than my personal reaction to the book, my review of the book. So technically, even though I made a 1 hour long video on Crossroads of Ravens, I've never actually reviewed Crossroads of Ravens yet. So I have a very nice hardcover edition of the book to use. Why not do it now? I'm going to go skim this book, I'm going to charge my camera, and then we'll meet back here like in an hour, and I'll tell you my thoughts. As I was reading this book, it all came back to me. I remembered why my video essay took so freaking long, and I wasn't able to have it out by Christmas, which was the goal, and instead it took me until February. Why was that? Well, because I wasn't just talking about Crossroads of Ravens. In actuality, I was talking about this book, Season of Storms, because this is not the first addition to the Witcher books, which we've had from Sapkowski in the previous years. Season of Storms came out, Saison Bouge, when was this? 2013, right? 2013. The thing is that we had the precedent of this midquel for this prequel, and that complicated everything, because it wasn't just, oh, is Crossroads of Ravens a good book? It was, is Crossroads of Ravens going to be another Season of Storms? Now, if you haven't read Season of Storms, I'm not going to spoil the book for you. However, well, okay, here, let's do this. Let's do a compliment sandwich. That's when you say something nice, you give your critique, and then you say something nice again. So starting out with the good. It has Geralt in it. It has Dandelion in it. That's pretty good. I like the setting. I like Karak. I think, okay, so I find Season of Storms pacing to be absolutely whack, because also Sapkowski had come from writing his Hussite trilogy. Well, not exactly right after, but he had gotten himself into this much faster pacing for the form of a novel, and it works for the Hussite trilogy, because Hussite trilogy, for me, it kind of feels almost like a diary, because it's historical fiction partly. The Hussite trilogy is split into like 30 different chapters, and it's this thick, you can see. Season of Storms is split into 20 different chapters, and it's this thick, as you can see. Well, it's like 20, oh my god, it's like 25 if you count all of the, oh, I forgot there's no, looking for the table of contents. There's no table of contents in the physical books. It's only in the ebooks. But here's my complaint, okay? Baptism of Fire, 7 chapters. Time of Contempt, 7 chapters. Blood of Elves, 7 chapters. Season of Storms, 20-something chapters. And it doesn't work for The Witcher the same way it does for the Hussite trilogy, in Season of Storms specifically. And that's because the plot of Season of Storms is a tangled and fucked up mess. And I'm not being mean when I say that. You know, typically a story will have an exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, denouement, or resolution. This has just like... Listen, I'm not a hater of the books. Some people enjoyed Season of Storms for what it was, for that kind of chaotic mess. It felt a bit like life, where things are just happening and you don't really have any agency in anything. That worked for some people, but it doesn't really work for me. I forgot the ending compliment, so it was like a compliment open sandwich. Let me end my compliment sandwich. I do really love the epilogue from Season of Storms. I adore it. It's part of why I call myself Nimue on this channel. It just brought everything full circle for me, full Ouroboros for me. Even though the plot is very messy, if you are a fan of The Witcher, you will be like, okay, this enriches my experience. So I'm not trying to be like, don't read Season of Storms, like cancel the book. No. However, I feel like the skill in something like the saga is much higher than it is in Season of Storms. For me, Season of Storms felt a little bit called in some regards because of the pacing issues. So that's where it leaves us with Crossroads of Ravens. Because in November of last year, or whenever it was, we got the announcement, there's gonna be a new Witcher book. And I was like, oh, okay, another Season of Storms, great. Can you do more of the epilogue stuff and less of the crazy plot stuff? So that was where my mind was at when it was announced. And also, when we heard it was going to be a prequel, I was worried. Okay, let me just say that I was worried. Because I feel like where media is at right now, and perhaps has been since like the 80s, right? There's always some sequel, prequel, midquel, like we never get something new. It's not like they can't be good, but sometimes when stuff is announced like that, it's a red flag. And also specifically because Sapkowski said in interviews of yesteryear, he said that he would never write a prequel for Geralt. And I was just like, okay, you broke your rule, you broke your principle. Okay, we're at Stygia Castle right now and you just broke your principle, okay? That's red flag right there, okay? That is why I was mildly concerned for Crossroads of Ravens. But then the book came out. I was actually like blown out of the water by Crossroads of Ravens, not necessarily because it exceeds the quality of other books that I've read, but because I had not very good expectations for the book. I'm sorry to say. I'm sorry to admit to it. But I was worried after Season of Storms because Season of Storms felt more called in and I was just like, okay, this is going to be another prequel. It's going to be, something put out for new fans of The Witcher to get into the books, which is great, but it probably won't be that quality itself. No, I was wrong. I was so wrong. First off, I have to say, the pacing in this book, way better than Season of Storms, okay? All of the problems that I have with Season of Storms do not exist with this book in terms of pacing. Because this book very clearly has rising, climax, falling. It's very satisfying the way it all plays out. And also, I feel like there's almost kind of like a twist in it. Again, no spoilers. But it is a little bit of a roller coaster, even though it's a prequel and you know that Geralt is going to be okay in the end. Sapkowski kind of like brought it with this novel. It was so unexpected, but like he did a lot of things that he's really good at doing as an author. This is basically what I was saying in my video essay. Sapkowski choosing to write from a young Geralt perspective was actually a really smart move because he is really good at writing coming of age stories that like actually matter and don't feel called in. Ciri feels very authentic as a character. Rainovan feels very overly authentic as a character almost. For Geralt, it's almost like he had to reinvent the character and create an entirely separate, different kind of character. That's what I talk about in the essay. That this is a type A hero that he's dealing with, and that affects the whole everything of the novel. And it works because he knows what he's doing with that character. He knows that he's going to have to put him through hell, but he knows that he's going to end up in a different place than in the beginning of the book. And that was my issue with Season of Storms. Because in Season of Storms, it's a midquel, granted, right? But Geralt in the beginning of Season of Storms feels like Geralt at the ending of Season of Storms. It feels like there's been no change in his character. And Geralt is not a character that typically has a flat arc. In every book of the saga, in every short story, it feels like he's changed like completely almost by the end of the story. And so I think that Season of Storms really threw me off because that's not how my boy Geralt of Rivia works. So Geralt, even though he is a very different kind of Geralt, he is a young and inexperienced Geralt in comparison to the old hand, the professional Witcher that we know, he develops very well by the end of the novel, and it's in a way that makes sense for his character, for The Witcher as a series, and it feels very sincere. That is the next thing that I want to talk about. The Geralt characterization in this book relates so heavily to the Geralt from the short stories. Because in the short stories, he does have like this whole dilemma about emotions which Witchers are not supposed to feel, and which yet he feels very strongly anyways. The fact that like Sapkowski kind of went back to basics with this book, but like it really worked because he knows the basics that he's using. Sapkowski remembered exactly who Geralt is and what his concerns as a character are. It's like all there in this very tiny baby Geralt who is just starting out in life. Now, of course, it's not like you can just go read the saga and be like, oh yeah, I remember that happened in Crossroads of Ravens, because Crossroads of Ravens was not an inkling in the author's mind when he was writing the saga. But there are elements from this book which make relative sense for the events of the saga. For example, Geralt's neutrality in the saga. Very famous thing he has to unlearn by the middle of it. I feel like the magic of this prequel came from the fact that it didn't concern itself with the inconsequential stuff that doesn't matter at all for the character. There were actually like some pretty high stakes involved in this book, and I feel like it bettered it. Again, I can't spoil it, but like there's something that happens in this book that you'll just be going like, Geralt, no, Geralt! Anyways, so that's one thing that the book does that I think makes it feel sincere. Something else, and this is the part where like Geralt's journey in this book is very authentic. And this is where we get into like personal relation and experience as well, because I'm not necessarily as young as Geralt is in this book. He's 18, so I'm a little bit older than that. I'm in my 20s. But like the way that he graduates school and then has no fucking idea what he's doing. He gets himself into trouble because he's Geralt and he acts on his morals and his values and his virtues. And the world doesn't want that baby. The world says, shut the fuck up. The world doesn't want virtue, it wants obedience. And I feel like Geralt growing up and taking hard lessons in this book was just like so relatable. I did see like a lot of Sapkowski's like Sapkowski-isms creep into this book by way of his background in economy and economics. Actually, I had this like analysis that it also kind of feels like a young author being published for the first time, because he has to like go get a mentor. He has to go get an agent. He has to give his agent a cut of his profits. He has to like go out into the world and like kind of sell himself. For anyone who's starting out in a profession of any sort, this book is like so relatable. Fortunately or unfortunately. Nimue backstory, not really. But when I got into college, I felt like this was like my moment. Like I had finally accomplished the thing that all of my schooling beforehand had been for. And then I did college and I did great and I got straight A's like in high school, and it was like the best time. I was friends with all my professors by the end, and I had a bunch of jobs on campus, and it was just like so satisfying. And then I graduated and I was just like, wait, so where is my place in the world? You know, honestly, like if I could send this book to my younger self, honestly, I wish I could, because I feel like a lot of advice that people give young people is like, oh yeah, when the real world hits you, then you'll know. And it's like, cool, I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. The fact that this book actually gets into almost like the nitty gritty of what the post-graduation world looks like. You know, that you're gonna have to get a job. You're gonna have to get an agent. You're gonna have to get a mentor. You have to figure out your pricing, you know, because Geralt's a Witcher, he works on commission. There's all of this like little details that I'm not sure that like other authors might pay so much attention to, right? So that was something that was really valuable for me about this book. The last thing that I wanted to talk about why this book feels sincere to me is something maybe controversial. So in this book, there's like a bunch of callbacks. So if you've read the Witcher series, you will recognize certain phrases, passages, references to things that happen that I won't spoil because it's a big spoiler, but pitchfork is all I'll say. The reason why I think that this is a controversial opinion is because I feel like a lot of people will see that and be like, oh, he's phoning it in, like just repeating, just copying what was said before, like so basic. But like, I don't know, I found it nice. I guess it really also depends like if you've read the series recently, because if you've read it like maybe 20 years ago, right? If you read it 30 years ago when it first came out, then maybe it's like not really that important because you either will recognize it and you'll be like, wow, the nostalgia that I get from that. Or you won't recognize it and it will just slip right past you. But like, I talk about The Witcher a lot. I talk about The Witcher with my friends online and I post about it on social media. And so I'm always like opening the books on my phone and like screenshotting random passages and sending it. The fact that like these little references, these little passages are in the book, it's like, oh, I got it. I just read that like last night. There were some phrases that are just very classic, and to see them like almost repurposed for this new book, it was very satisfying in a way. And the reason that I think this works for me is because I think it's like not overdone. You know, there's only like a few of these little references and callbacks, but if you get them, it's like satisfying moment. But if you don't get them, it's also okay because it's not the only thing that makes the book endearing. It's just like a little like added seasoning and reward for readers. I want to also say that the way that Sapkowski drops quotes and references to the books is very, very different than example, how the Netflix series drops quotes from the books. Because Sapkowski actually puts them in context and like understands what he's working with because it's his own material. Meanwhile, the Netflix series is just like the time of contempt. Yeah, it's nigh. As well as the time of the sword and the axe. Magic, it's lodged in you. Like a spiked iron arrow. Man, that really baptisms my fire. Like, it does kind of have like a purpose to evoke memory or to play a little game with the reader. So that's why I enjoyed it. There are like these little bits and pieces, for example, how Geralt got Roach or why Geralt always wears a headband, that are just like, that's not really like a burning lore question that I had, but it, you know, is cute and it's endearing and I like Geralt, so it's an added bonus for me. Speaking of things that are lore related, so there are several different lore dumps in this book. And given the short nature of the book, I feel like it's excusable because like it's not that many words, it's not that long, but that does mean that there is a bit of character telling character how stuff happened. This is why I feel like this book works well as a prequel, maybe not so much as a standalone, because I feel like if you're not already invested in the Witcher series, these lore dumps will be kind of painful to read instead of like hanging on every word because OMG, the canon is being expanded finally. My opinion as a Witcher fan was like, yes, we finally got Kaer Morhen lore, let's go. Like the added information about the Kaer Morhen pogrom. We got names for all the Witcher potions. This stuff is like probably not going to be very interesting to people who aren't into The Witcher, but like to know that the potion that gives Geralt night vision is called Nightjar is just like, yes, got it. I mean, I love the games as much as the next person, right? But the thing is that I don't like crossing the game's canon with the book's canon. If I'm trying to focus directly on the book's canon, I don't want to be using what is Cedric Proyect's fan fiction and then applying it to the books. So that is one final reason why I do feel like Crossroads of Ravens succeeds in what it aims to do. As a prequel connecting with the original series, it is very successful. If you are a Witcher fan, you will love this book. It is different than the original series, but it's something new, it's something fresh. It is very much like a light read. Well, the first half of this is a light read. After the midpoint gets ugly. but in a good way, in a witchery way, in a Sapkowski-ish way. It is a very short read, so if you want to take this on vacation or something, or if you just want to devour this on your daily commute, like, go for it. Would I recommend this to people who have not read The Witcher? Yes, but there might be some caveats. I feel like you should read at least a few of the short stories before you read Crossroads of Ravens. Back when I did my reading order for The Witcher video in like January, I did say read at least Blood of Elves before you read Crossroads of Ravens, because otherwise you won't understand the main sort of conflict in this plot. However, I mean, the thing is that this book is so accessible because it's so short, because it's only from Geralt's POV, because it has these like explanations about what the Witcher world is like without getting too much into detail about the lore. I feel like it's a very good gift book or beginning for maybe teen readers, or I guess young adult readers like myself, who are just wanting like their first little dipping their toes into the world of The Witcher. What I really like about this as an introduction to The Witcher is that it's from Sapkowski. It's a Witcher book. And that is not to disparage the games. It is to disparage the Netflix show. It's not to disparage the games, the Hexer, the tabletop role-playing games, anything like that. No, I do appreciate all those mediums. However, they are not equivalent to the books. I talked about this a lot in my transmedia video, which was supposed to get a sequel. It's like very much delayed, sorry about that. Playing a video game is just not the same experience as reading a book. And that's not saying one is better, one is worse. It's saying they are different experiences. The Witcher games are defined by their choice, by their giving choice to the players, while the books are linear because they're books. So the thing is, if you're trying to get someone into the books and you give them a video game, it's just like, yes, they can translate some things, but you're not going to be able to translate everything. And actually, I feel like it kind of complicates things and makes it more difficult for people to get into the books. I say that as someone who got into The Witcher through the video games. I got into The Witcher through The Witcher 3. With that, I feel like I had to undo a lot of the learning of the world and the characters that I had done with the game in order to fully grasp the books. The fact that Crossroads of Ravens has Witcher lore, has Geralt characterization that is short, accessible, and easy just to like give to someone. You know, I feel like that is very valuable for it as a book and as a standalone. Even though I think it is stronger as a prequel, it can also function as a standalone and a good way to get someone into The Witcher. Okay, I guess this is how I'll end the video. Extended thoughts on fandom and fans and new releases and new stuff coming out. I actually wasn't around when Season of Storms released. I only got into Witcher in 2017, so 2013, I wasn't around. I was in middle school. So the fact that like we got a new Witcher book, it's been translated in under a year. It's in my hands in under a year. Knowing how crazy and delayed sometimes the translation of the Witcher books have been. I'm looking at you, period of like what, from 2009 to 2013, like oof, right? It really pleases me to see that Hachette Book Group is taking The Witcher seriously and being like, yes, we want to invest cool, we want to make cool for the fandom, for the fans. Yes, The Witcher has gained popularity with the Netflix show, but being there for the release of something new, for a new Witcher book, not a new season, not a new whatever, a book is like very exciting to me. And I know that not everyone may be excited by it. I'm excited by it. I'm excited that Hachette Book Group is excited because that means that we get more cool stuff. I know that I don't need to be like up in arms defending The Witcher. Like, it is a classic from the 90s. It has a very devoted fan base. But I will say, sometimes it feels the Witcher books, feel very overshadowed by the Netflix show and also the games. And then it always leads to this question. Wait a minute, there were books? Yes, there's books. There's a new one out right now. Go read it. You know, like I can actually point to a new book and be like, yes, have you read this? Here you are. I love the Witcher series with all my heart. but it is very difficult to recommend someone the whole Witcher series all at once and just be like, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's 7 books. Figure it out. And especially because it is a series from the 90s, I feel like it is more difficult to get people involved in it because of that time gap. I mean, people want stuff that's new, and that's understandable. That's good. I like new shiny things too. And I do love this new shiny thing. I feel like this is a very successful book because it will bring the community closer together. So that is pretty much everything I wanted to say about Crossroads of Ravens. I hope this video won't be so long. Sorry, it was unscripted, very impromptu, but I did want to record something just about the unboxing of this wonderful package that Orbit sent me and say big thank you. And also just some housekeeping before we wrap up. Next month on this channel will be Baptism of Fire month. Because next month on October 30th, as the news was, something is being released, something Wicked This Way rides, and I am going to single-handedly stop it. No, I can't stop it, guys, but I can put out video essays about my favorite book. So look out for that when it's out. Baptism of Fire is my absolute favorite book in the Witcher series and kind of all time, so I have a lot of words to say about it. And everything that Netflix is doing, I might have stuff to say on that if it pisses me off enough, which it probably will. I might do some streams. I might do some reactions to season 4 of The Witcher Netflix because they are adapting Baptism of Fire in that. I'll catch up with you guys on the rest of social media, and thank you for watching this video. Take care, and I'll see you next time on Anis Vitra.